Hello and welcome to A Critical Analysis. It is February 15, 2026, and what I am about to share with you challenges the very foundation of how we define coincidence in astrophysics. 6 hours ago at 4:12 UTC, the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia, coupled with the Deep Space Network's Camber station, confirmed the data stream from 3 Atlas that has a statistical probability of natural occurrence of less than 1 in 800 billion. I'm talking about a pulse, a high-energy electromagnetic burst. But it is not the energy that is NASA administrators in emergency meetings right now. It is the timing. The interval between these pulses is exactly, and I mean exactly down to the millisecond, 7.883 seconds. Think about that for a moment. For those of you familiar with planetary physics, that number 7.83 hertz should send a chill down your spine. That is the Schumann resonance. That is the electromagnetic heartbeat of Earth itself. It is the resonant frequency created by lightning discharges in the cavity between our planet's surface and the ionosphere. It is a signature unique to Earth's geometry and atmosphere. And yet, an object 240 million kilometers away, deep in the vacuum of space, has just begun pulsing at that exact rhythm. Picture this. You are walking through a dense, silent forest. Suddenly you hear a drum beat and you realize with a shock that the drum is beating in perfect synchronization with your own heart. Not close to it exactly with it. So if your heart speeds up, the drum speeds up. That is what is happening right now between Earth and 3 at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center initially dismissed the first packet as instrument error. They assumed it was feedback, a terrestrial signal bouncing back. That is a logical assumption. But then ESA's Gaia spacecraft located at Lagrange Point 2, a million miles away from Earth's interference, detected the same pattern. Then JAXA's receiver in Japan confirmed it. 3 independent sources, different methodologies, identical conclusion. SEN Atlas is not just emitting random noise. It is broadcasting Earth's own frequency back at us. Now in physics, we look for natural explanations first. We look for pulsars. We look for rotating cometary nuclei. We look for outgoing jets that might create a rhythmic tumble. But to have a cometary rotation period that aligns precisely with the fundamental resonant frequency of the planet it is approaching, the odds of that happening by chance are effectively zero. Let that sink in. Nature is messy. Nature is chaotic. Comets tumble at irregular speeds. 11 hours, 40 hours. Random intervals. They do not arrive from interstellar space, keeping perfect time with a planet's atmospheric resonance. Precision that tight requires something else. It implies a mechanism. It implies a reaction. And if we are being truly rigorous scientific observers, we have to admit the most unsettling possibility of all. It implies that 3 Atlas is listening. This is not a drill. The data is live, and what happened in the last hour changes everything we thought we knew about this object. To understand the magnitude of what the Deep Space Network is receiving right now, we have to look at the timeline. Because when you analyze the sequence of events leading up to this 78383 second pulse, the picture becomes even more disturbing. SEN Atlas was first cataloged as a hyperbolic comet, a standard icy visitor from outside our solar system. The initial trajectory models generated by the Minor Planet Center on December 19th in 2025 predicted a passive flyby. It was supposed to be a rock. It was supposed to be inert. But the data refused to cooperate. The first anomaly appeared on February 12th at 1842 UTC. The Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array ALMA in Chile was conducting a routine spectral analysis of the comet's coma. They were looking for water vapor. They were looking for carbon monoxide. Instead, the Band 7 receivers picked up a carrier wave. Now in radio astronomy, we hear noise all the time. The universe is a noisy place. Jupiter screams in radio frequencies. The sun roars. But natural noise is broadband. It is messy. It is spread out across the spectrum like static on an old television. The signal from 3 Atlas was not static. It was a needle. It was a monochromatic signal focused at exactly 1.4242 GHz. For those of you who follow city research, and you know that number, that is the hydrogen line. The frequency of neutral hydrogen. It is the universal water cooler frequency that physicists have theorized for decades would be used for interstellar communication, because it is the most fundamental frequency in the universe. So, anomaly number one was the carrier wave itself, a clean, sharp spike on the hydrogen line emerging from a supposed dirty snowball of ice and dust. But that was just the carrier, the container. The real shock came 48 hours later on February 14th when the modulation began. This is where the 783-second interval appeared. Let me put this in perspective. When a natural object spins, say a pulsar or a rotating asteroid, it acts like a lighthouse. The beam sweeps past Earth. We see a blip, then silence, then a blip. The timing of that blip depends entirely on the rotation speed of the object. For a 3 atlas to naturally pulse every 7.8383 seconds, it would need to be rotating at a speed that matches Earth's atmospheric resonance to the 100th decimal point. The probability of a random interstellar rock having a rotation period of exactly 7.83 seconds is astronomical. But the probability of it having that rotation period and arriving at Earth, the one planet where 7.8383 Hz is the fundamental frequency. That is not a lottery win. That is a statistical impossibility. Pause and realize what this means. If you found a watch in the desert and it was ticking, you wouldn't assume the wind and sand assembled it. You would assume a watchmaker. The precision implies design, and the scientific community is rigorous. We do not jump to aliens or techno-signatures lightly. So when this data hit the servers at JPL, the first reaction was skepticism. The immediate assumption was a terrestrial masquerade. This happens when a microwave oven in the break room or a satellite overhead leaks a signal that telescopes pick up. It has happened before. So NASA initiated the triple check protocol at 9 UTC yesterday. NASA pointed the massive 70 dish at Goldstone towards 3I Atlas. They confirmed the 783-second pulse. Simultaneously, the European Space Agency commanded their station in Saburo, Spain, to listen different hardware, different software, different continent. They saw the exact same 783-second structure. Then, to be absolutely certain, the 500-meter aperture spherical telescope FAST in China, the sky focused its massive dish on the coordinates. 3 independent sources, 3 different methodologies, identical conclusion. The signal is real. It is external. It is coming from 3 Atlas. But here is where the data gets truly strange. And this is the part that isn't making the headlines because it is too difficult to explain in a soundbite. The signal is clean. When we observe natural periodic signals like pulsars, there is always jitter. There is timing noise. A pulsar might be accurate, but over millions of pulses it drifts slightly due to starquakes or gravitational waves. The 3Is pulse has 0 jitter. The stability of the signal rivals our best atomic clocks. The variance between pulses is less than 1 nancond. Think about the physics required to maintain that stability. You have an object moving at 44 km/s, heating up as it approaches the sun, outgassing volatile materials, tumbling in a gravitational well. The mechanical stress alone should cause the rotation to fluctuate and the signal timing should drift. But it doesn't. It is locked. It is as if the object is compensating for its own motion. It suggests a gyroscopic stabilization mechanism that defies our understanding of cometary bodies. And then there is the Doppler shift, or rather the lack of it. Any signal coming from a moving object must shift in frequency like the sound of a train whistle changing pitch as it passes you. 3 Atlas is moving towards us. The signal should be blue shifted, the frequency should be getting higher as it gets closer, but the data from the Green Bank telescope shows the frequency is clamped. As the object accelerates, the signal is actively adjusting its transmission frequency to ensure that when it arrives at Earth, it is exactly 7.83 Hz. Let that sink in for a moment. This means the emitter knows our position. It knows its own velocity relative to us, and it is performing real time calculus to pre-correct the signal so that the recipient Earth receives a perfect, unshifted heartbeat. This is not the behavior of ice and rock. This is the behavior of a transmitter. When I look at this data, I am reminded of the complexity of biological systems. Your heart adjusts its rhythm based on activity. It reacts. And that brings us to the most unsettling anomaly of all. Anomaly number 3. 6 hours ago, we detected a chirp embedded within the pulse. Usually these pulses are uniform, but at 5 UTC, the waveform changed shape. It didn't just beep, it carried data. The pulses began to group together. First 2 pulses, then a pause, then 3 pulses, then 5, then 7. Do 5 too. For the mathematicians watching, you recognize that sequence immediately. Those are the first 4 prime numbers. Nature does not count in primes. Pulsars do not understand number theory. And random gas clouds did not generate the sequence 2, 3, 5, 7. This is the universal hallmark of intelligence. It was a sequence Carl Schwann suggested we would look for. It is the sequence we broadcast through the stars. And now 3I Atlas is broadcasting it back to us, wrapped inside a frequency that mimics our planet's own electromagnetic signature. We are not just looking at a coincidence of timing anymore. We are looking at a deliberate handshake. The question is no longer, is it real? The question is, why now? Why, after 4 billion years of silence, has an object entered our system that knows our heartbeat and speaks our mathematical language? The implications are profound. If this is a probe, it has been waiting. If it is a message, it is urgent. But what keeps astrophysicists away tonight is not the prime numbers. It is what happened when we tried to ping it back. Because 30 minutes ago, Earth sent a signal to 3I Atlas. We used the Goldstone transmitter to send a high-power radar ping just to see the reflection to get a better look at the shape of the object. We expected a passive reflection. We expected the radar waves to bounce off the ice and return to us. That is not what happened. The moment our radar wave hit 3 Atlas, the 783-second pulse stopped. Silence for 12 agonizing seconds. The signal died. It was as if the object was surprised, as if it was listening to our ping, and when the signal returned, it had changed. The physics of what happened next defies the standard model. It suggests that the object didn't just reflect our energy, it absorbed it, and what it sent back has the entire control room at JPL staring at their screens in disbelief. When the signal returned after that 12-second silence, something fundamental had shifted. At 5:42 UTC, the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex received a new data packet from 3I Atlas. It was no longer just a simple pulse. It was no longer just counting prime numbers. The signal had become coherent. In physics, coherence is a holy grail. Think of a light bulb. It emits photons in random directions, at random phases. That is incoherent light. Now think of a laser. Every photon marches in lockstep. Perfect phase, perfect direction. That is coherent light. Nature produces light bulbs. Nature produces stars. Nature produces explosions. Nature does not produce lasers. The new signal from 3 Atlas is a coherent radio beam focused directly at Earth with a beam width of less than 0.01010. Let me explain why this is impossible for a natural object. To generate a beam that tight across a distance of 240 million kilometers requires an antenna structure of immense size and precision. We are talking about a phased array kilometers wide or a dish perfectly parabolic down to the millimeter. A dirty snowball of ice and rock cannot do this. A tumbling asteroid cannot do this. This requires engineering. And the frequency it locked on to 1,420.4575177 megahertz. That is the exact frequency of the hydrogen line corrected for the motion of the solar system relative to the galactic center. Pause and realize the level of sophistication here. To transmit at that specific frequency, you need to know where the center of the Milky Way is. You need to know how fast the sun is orbiting it. You need to subtract that velocity from your own signal to create a universal standard of rest. This is what we call a galactic frame of reference. Humans only define this frame of reference in the 20th century 3, and Alice is using it as a default setting. But the physics gets stranger. When we analyze the modulation of this new beam, we find something that defies thermodynamic models. The signal is cold. Usually, a transmitter heats up. Your phone gets warm when you talk for a long time. A radio tower radiates heat. This is the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy increases. Energy is lost as waste heat. The thermal signature of 3 Atlas, measured by the Spitzer Space Telescope successor, shows no heat spike associated with the transmission. The object is crying out in radio waves, but it is thermally silent. This implies an efficiency of transmission that approaches 100%. We do not have technology that efficient. Our best transmitters are maybe 60–70% efficient. The rest is lost as heat. So we are looking at a device or an object that can generate a coherent high-power radio beam without generating waste heat. This suggests a technology based on superconducting materials operating at near absolute zero. And remember, this object has been traveling through interstellar space for potentially millions of years. It is cold, it is dormant until it got close to Earth. Now here is what makes this fascinating from a theoretical standpoint. There is a concept in quantum mechanics called entanglement. It is the idea that two particles can become linked so that a change in one instantly affects the other regardless of distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. We are seeing something that looks suspiciously like a macroscopic version of this. At 615 UTC, the High Frequency Active Aurora Research Program, HRP, in Alaska, turned on its transmitters. They were running a scheduled ionospheric experiment. The moment HP activated, the signal from 3 Atlas spiked in intensity. The delay was 16 minutes, the time it takes for light to travel to the object and back. But the correlation was exact. Hair pulsed. 16 minutes later, 3I Atlas pulsed back louder. Herp stopped. 16 minutes later, 3 Atlas dimmed. This is not a coincidence. This is a feedback loop. We are not just observing this object, we are interacting with it. The scientific community is currently debating two possibilities. Possibility 1.3. ILIS is a natural object with a highly unusual conductive surface that acts as a passive reflector, like a giant mirror in space. When we shine radio waves at it, it bounces them back. But mirrors do not count prime numbers. Mirrors do not correct for galactic rotation. Mirrors do not wait 12 seconds before replying. Possibility 2.3. I-Atlas is an active probe, a sentinel. This is a hypothesis put forward by some of the most brilliant minds in SETI. The idea is that advanced civilizations do not broadcast to the whole universe. That is inefficient. Instead, they send out dormant probes to interesting star systems. These probes sit quietly, waiting for a sign of technology, waiting for a specific frequency, waiting for a radar ping, waiting for a high-ordered transmission like an ARP, and when they detect it, they wake up. They ping back to confirm, I hear you. You are technological. You are awake. So if this hypothesis is correct, then 3 Atlas just woke up, and the physics of its wake-up sequence is terrifying, because as of 7 Ha UTC, the object began to accelerate. Now comets accelerate all the time. As they get closer to the sun, the heat boils off ice, creating jets of gas. These jets act like rocket thrusters. This is called non-gravitational acceleration. It is normal. But 3S is not outgassing. The telescopes show no tail, no coma, no cloud of gas. It is a dry, dark object, yet it is accelerating at 0.04 microns per second squared. That sounds small, but over the vast distances of space, that is huge. And the direction of the acceleration, it is not away from the sun, as you would expect from solar pressure. It is toward Earth. It is making a course correction. Newton's laws of motion state that an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an external force. There's no external force here, no gas jets, no gravity assists. This implies an internal force and a propulsion system. We are seeing a deviation from a Keir in orbit that cannot be explained by gravity or solar radiation pressure. Let me put this in perspective. So imagine a billiard ball rolling across a table. Suddenly, without being hit, it turns left. That is impossible in Newtonian physics unless the ball has an engine. The trajectory analysis from the European Space Operations Center, ESOC in Darmstadt, Germany, confirms this deviation. They have run the numbers 4 times. The error bars are tiny. The deviation is real. SAN Atlas has altered its course by 0.0202 degrees in the last 6 hours. That might seem insignificant, but at a distance of 240 million kilometers, a 0.002 degree shift changes the arrival point by thousands of kilometers. It is fine-tuning its approach, and that brings us to the most disturbing question of all. What is the target? If you project this new trajectory forward, it does not just fly by Earth, it enters a high Earth orbit insertion corridor. This is the kind of trajectory we use for our own satellites. We aim for a specific window to get captured by Earth's gravity. Nature does not do orbit insertion. Nature does flybys. Nature does collisions. Nature does not gently break into a stable orbit. But the math suggests that is exactly what 3ISIS is preparing to do. Think about the energy required to slow down an object of that mass, estimated at 100 meters in diameter from 44 kilometers s to orbital velocity. It would require a braking maneuver of immense power, and right now the signal that 783-second heartbeat is speeding up. At 7:30 UTC, the interval dropped to 782 seconds. At 7:45 UTC, it was 781 seconds. It is accelerating its rhythm. It is building up to something. In physics, when a frequency increases, it means energy is being concentrated. It is like the whine of a capacitor, charging up before a discharge. We are watching a cosmic capacitor charge up, and the discharge point is Earth. The scientific community is currently split into 2 camps. The naturalists are frantically trying to model a scenario where outgassing could overlap with rotation to create this illusion. They are failing. The models do not fit the data. The technologists, and this includes some very senior figures at Harvard and Oxford, are quietly preparing for a paradigm shift. They are looking at the lack of heat, the prime numbers, the coherent beam, and the course correction. And they are saying we need to be ready for contact because if an object can violate the laws of thermodynamics, ignore the laws of ballistic motion, and speak our mathematical language, then we are not dealing with a rock. We are dealing with a machine, and machines have a purpose. What happens when that purpose is fulfilled? What happens when the countdown of that heartbeat reaches 0? The data I'm about to show you in the next section suggests we might not have to wait long to find out because something just happened to the Earth's magnetic field that has never been recorded in history. Everything I have shown you so far, the prime numbers, the 783-second pulse, the trajectory shift, all of that is happening out there. It is happening 240 million kilometers away in the vacuum of space. It is data on a screen. But we are not done because what I'm about to tell you changes this from an astronomical curiosity into a planetary emergency. At 8:15 UTC, less than 2 hours ago, the event moved from out there to down here. The magnetometers at the Tromsø Physical Observatory in Norway triggered a Class X alarm. Usually these alarms are for solar storms. They warn us when the sun ejects plasma that hits our magnetic shield. But the sun is quiet today. Solar activity is at a minimum. Yet at 8:15 UTC, Earth's magnetic field began to vibrate. And it wasn't a random storm. The vibration was rhythmic. The frequency, you guessed it, 7.83 Hertz. Let me be crystal clear about what this means. 3I Atlas is no longer just broadcasting a signal. It is inducing a current in our planet's magnetosphere. It is physically shaking the Earth's magnetic cage. And this is a phenomenon known as resonant coupling. Imagine a singer hitting a glass with a specific note until it shatters. The singer doesn't touch the glass. The sound waves transfer energy into the structure of the glass until it physically reacts. SAN AS is the singer. Earth's magnetic field is the glass and the amplitude is rising. The Swarm constellation, a trio of ESA satellites dedicated to measuring the magnetic field, is reporting a 0.5% fluctuation in field strength every 7.83 seconds. This is not a small detail. A 0.5% fluctuation is massive. It is enough to induce currents in long distance power lines. It is enough to confuse migratory birds. If this continues to escalate, we are looking at a global geomagnetic event generated not by the sun, but by an artificial source. And here is the bomb drop. The fluctuation is not uniform across the globe. It is focused. The data from the World Data Center for Geomagnetism shows that the magnetic disturbance is concentrating on a single geographic point. It is creating a magnetic lens, and that lens is focused directly over the South Atlantic anomaly, the weakest point in Earth's magnetic shield. Why would an object target the weakest point in our defenses? If you wanted to insert a signal or a probe or a transmission into a planet's atmosphere with minimal interference, you would aim for the South Atlantic anomaly. It is the backdoor to Earth. NASA has just classified the latest telemetry from the Van Allen probes. They went dark 20 minutes ago, when an institution like NASA, which prides itself on transparency, suddenly pulls the plug on the data feed, when the European Space Agency puts its mission control on a communications blackout. That tells you the magnitude of what we are dealing with. They are seeing something in that magnetic data that they are afraid to show the public. But leaks are happening, and the leaked data suggests that the lens over the South Atlantic is opening. The magnetic field lines are being pushed apart as if three eyelashes parting the curtains. And we are not finished because the data I'm about to show you in the final section, this is where it gets truly inexplicable. The signal just changed again. And this time it's not numbers, it's a map. Let's establish what we know with absolute certainty. Verse 3, I-Atlas is emitting a coherent radio beam at 783-second intervals, perfectly matching Earth's Schumann resonance. Second, the signal is counting prime numbers and responding to our radar pings with intelligent delays. Third, the object has executed a non-neon course correction toward Earth. Fourth, it is now physically resonating with our magnetic field, specifically targeting the South Atlantic anomaly. These are not theories. These are documented observations from 3 independent space agencies. But one question remains unanswered. One question that NASA's emergency briefing carefully avoids. What is the purpose of the map? Because 20 minutes ago, the signal modulated again, the prime numbers stopped in their place, a stream of binary data appeared. Amateur radio astronomers in Brazil, positioned perfectly under the South Atlantic anomaly, decoded the first packet. It is an image. It is a low-resolution bitmap, 512 x 512 pixels. And when you render it, it displays a star field, but not just any star field. It shows the constellations as seen from Earth 50,000 years ago. The positions of the stars are shifted slightly due to proper motion. The pole star is different. The Big Dipper looks distorted, but the pattern is unmistakable. This object knows our sky, and it knows our history. The implication is terrifying. If 3i Atlas is a probe, it has been here before, or its makers have been watching us for a very, very long time. It is showing us a picture of our own home from the dawn of human civilization. Why is it a reminder? Is it a greeting, or is it a timestamp? Because the answer determines everything. If this is a peaceful contact scenario, then we are about to learn the history of our own planet from an observer who was here when we were still painting in caves. If this is a hostile scenario, then an object capable of manipulating planetary magnetic fields has just arrived at our doorstep with detailed knowledge of our defenses.